Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hey there, my name is Bryden Keks, and I am here today to talk about one of my favorite games, Journey, for the Fun and Games podcast, Side Quests. When thinking about a game I wanted to talk about for this podcast, there was a few that kind of jumped around in my mind, as I think for a lot of us, or maybe not for everybody, but for some of us, my favorite game can change based on the day or month or year, just general moods, you know. I'd say that overall my favorite game is Nier Automata, but when I was looking back at the last decade, at the beginning of 2020, Journey stood out as an experience that I reflected on as being quite powerful for me, and one that also was inherently unique as a cooperative experience of a complete stranger. And I think one of the most powerful aspects of Journey is that the way that people experience that game can be drastically different. The emotions that they kind of pull away from playing that experience by themselves or with another adventure that they feel is amazing and they've drawn a strong connection to, or is a total asshole that they don't want to deal with at all. These are all valid things, and I'm sure there is plenty of different variations on top of that too. And I think, you know, I might say that my experience of Journey was my preferred experience, or the one that I feel could have been the most powerful to me, but it's just one of many different types of journeys that people have taken by playing this game. And it was, in that sense, a game that I've now looked back on with even more fondness than when I originally experienced it. I feel in that moment when I played it originally, I felt obligated to play through the entirety because I went into it as a kind of solo, solitary expectation of playing this game where I'm wandering through this desolate space where no one else is existing, to suddenly being connected with a complete stranger and communicating through just kind of noises and button taps. That getting to a point where, like I said, I didn't want to stop. I thought I was going to probably play it in a few sessions, but I didn't. I played it all in one sitting, and by the end of the game it had way more of an emotional punch than I expected because of this connection. And to me, as someone that grew up playing single player games, it showed me a type of experience with cooperative or I guess multiplayer games that I hadn't seen before. And I think that if we were to draw maybe a goal from putting this feature into the game, I think it would be that, you know, complete strangers could connect and work together and grow a bond. And that is honestly how I felt while playing Journey. And it's idealistic, right? Because I'm sure, as a lot of you know and also experience, playing games online can be toxic and awful, sometimes great too, especially when connecting with family members and friends. And considering the pandemic that we're all experiencing right now, it's also a really powerful way of being able to focus on something else and yeah, connect to people that are not necessarily right next to you. But I think, you know, in the context of 2012 when Journey came out, it was something that, one, you know, we're looking at independent games and indie games in the space, and they're just starting to get more popular. They've always existed in some capacity, but I think for a mainstream audience, you know, I look back at my experiences playing games, and I will say for myself that I gravitated towards a bunch of different experiences and never really honed into certain genres, but Journey was one of the first games I feel I had a really strong connection with that felt smaller in that sense, like a more compact one-sitting experience. And now I think of games like Gone Home that came shortly thereafter, and, you know, games on phones like Florence that I love, that, you know, considering time being an incredibly valuable thing a lot of days, for me, it showed me that I could play really powerful games that are also only a couple hours long. And I think that in itself was really powerful too. And, showing that there was also going to be this huge wave of amazing games made by smaller teams, and the mainstream audiences that were on consoles were going to kind of start to experience these. And yeah, Journey, I think in a lot of ways was one of the biggest successes of that early part of that decade. It is signifying to me too of like kind of this wave of games that were able to really have an impact, I think, on a like critical and mass scale that told narratives that were very much left in the player's hands. And you have games like Shadow of the Colossus as well, which came before it. Ico, same studio, and a bunch of other games too that, as I speak right now, I cannot remember. But the kind of narrative storytelling coming from the environment was something that Journey really delivered on too, and it was a unique experience that came from another individual giving themselves and their kind of energy and who they are into the character that they're playing. The movements that they chose, the way that they were tackling problems, these were all things that drastically changed my gameplay experience with Journey. And the way that we connected with each other was, although slightly cliche to say, entirely unique to anybody else. And yes, it was a short experience. Yes, I don't know who that person is. I've never connected with them whatsoever. But in that short period of time, they made that game for me. They made that experience like weighted and incredibly powerful. And I don't know, I to me, I still look back and I wrote up a piece for my team at Evolve. We were talking about best games of the decade. As we work in the PR side of things, we want to talk about some of our favorite games, and I wrote about Journey because of these exact reasons. And this isn't even touching on the fact that as an experience too, it's incredibly beautiful, and the space that it kind of delivers, like, it isn't an open world game, but the vastness of this desolate space is something that I have since been really drawn to while playing games. And I look at, saying, I was talking about Nier before, and Shadow of the Colossus being another favorite of mine, there, Bloodborne even, and the Dark Souls series, these are all games that, although there are aspects of civilization presented to you, or at least shown in a historical sense, they still very much feel like places that were once lived in way more than they are in the moment. And the mixture of what has transpired to get to this point, or kind of how nature has taken over, is something that to me is really exciting to explore, because it doesn't feel like you're being shown 1,000 things. There's not all these people that are giving you these pieces of narrative. You're kind of building it out based on small little details. And I feel like that obviously Journey isn't the start of this, but it was a really beautiful example of how that, like, a world could be created and shown to you, and a simple goal of, I'm going to go climb that mountain up there, I'm going to get to the top, could set the pace for a really fun, like, 2 to 3 hours, and at the same time too lead to so much story if you want to find it existing and being there for you, and so much of it as well being connected to your personal experience and what you draw from whoever you might meet, and however that bond kind of unfolds over the short amount of time together. And I don't want to be unnecessarily mean to myself, but a lot of games don't stick narratively. Like, I'll forget about them. I can play a single player game that I liked quite a bit, and 3 years later I could be like, I remember small brushstrokes of this or the ending, but that is it. And when I think about Journey, I remember most of it. I remember it's kind of almost beautifully like that 1 hour walk that you might have, or that you might still have, but an experience of, like, I know how long it takes to get to that destination over there. And you remember the hill in the middle, and kind of the part that looks over to the highway, and when you go past the park. These are all little pieces that help kind of build out this roadmap of your journey to get to that place. And sometimes we squish certain parts of them together. I feel like usually these hour-long walks in our minds are a lot shorter than they actually are, because we just, forget the boring parts and we kind of enjoy the scenic moments. We go, oh yeah, this is how it all fits together. And I feel like that's kind of just essentially what Journey is, that I can look back and remember trying to, get over the bridge, and the first time you usually meet someone, the first part where you're in this kind of completely open space going over sand dunes, and then the deeper parts of the game when you're finally like even pulling back before then. I'm gonna jump over my own thoughts here, but like the beauty of the sunset and kind of like surfing down the side as the camera cuts to look at it, and then going deep into the undergrounds of the like lost city that was once there too, and kind of how teamwork there can be so integral for you to get forward. And yeah, there's like little other details in there too, but these all stand out. The climb, the finally getting to the snowy bits, and eventually getting to the point where you like, whatever you want to interpret that as, but you and your partner both essentially die on the edge of your journey to get to the top, and then you finally awaken there. And it's all really beautiful because it's, again, something that you're just kind of seeing back to back to back. I haven't even mentioned that I treat Journey as a game that I share with close, friends and family that maybe aren't as interested in games, because I think, one, it's really beautiful, but two, it's for people that maybe are less used to orientating themselves with a controller and figuring stuff out. The demands of the game are relatively simple enough that you can enjoy most of it without feeling like you're struggling with the controls. And because it's at your own pace for so much of it too, you can really just take it in one piece at a time. I won't go too much farther, but I will say, if you haven't played Journey, take a couple hours, try it out. It's a really beautiful game, whether you play it by yourself or with a complete stranger. But again, I want to re-emphasize that the fact that That Game Company was able to make a really beautiful short experience where you have a profound connection with a complete stranger on the internet that you never meet again, that is something really beautiful and something that has stuck with me for quite some time. And yeah, Journey is one of my favorite games. It's been a pleasure talking about it. My name is Bryden Keks. You can follow me on Twitter at Bryden Keks. And yeah, I talk about video games there that I'm working on and just stuff that I love. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you're enjoying the series. Happy gaming, and have a good one. Bye.
Did you know Rob Thomas has been writing since the mid-90s?
The Matchbox 20 guy?
No, the guy behind Veronica Mars.
Oh, and iZombie.
And Cupid, Party Down, the Cupid reboot.
I haven't seen those.
Me neither, but we should watch them and then talk about them on our podcast.
Yes. We could call it the Rob Thomas.
No, not that one.
Robcast.
Every other Tuesday with Alex and MJ.
Find us at notthatrobcast.libsyn.com or wherever you download podcasts.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.